Hi, everyone. Welcome back to a new episodes of Emerging Brands Podcast with Kelly Bennett. I'm your host, Kelly. I am a New York City based brand strategist, and I started this podcast so I could speak to founders who are building cool emerging brands and also the people who help build cool emerging brands. Kelley Arena is on the podcast today. She is the founder of Golden Hour Ventures. And Kelly, I am just so thrilled to have you on today.
I'm so thrilled to be here. It's amazing what happens when just people called Kelly come together.
I agree. I always love a good Kelly moment, and I really appreciate you saying yes to coming on the podcast. One of the things that I am personally so curious about learning more about is venture capital, fundraising, angel investing, like all of those things from my own experience over the years building brands, but really to better understand how it works. And you are one of the people who I genuinely look up to, and I just really appreciate and value what you are building and really closing the gender gap for women in particular to have access to capital. So, I just wanna know all the things from you. So, to dive in, can you give us the backstory of how you started your own brand, raising capital and helping women be more informed on how to raise capital?
Happy to, yeah. So I started my career, my very, very first job was at a professional football franchise, the Philadelphia Eagles,
Interesting.
right after college, and really kind of came up in these more male dominated, masculine cultures. Had a bunch of fun doing it, but as you can imagine, not a lot of upward mobility in that line of work. And then from there, I had my first like really big girl job in corporate finance at Johnson and Johnson, and rotated through some operating companies, like kind of just learning like big corporate infrastructure and what it means to be like a financial leader within that context. And then I really wanted to switch things up and have this like fast-paced Wall Street career that I'd fantasized about and watch Sex in the City episodes. And I was like, I want to move to New York and be that girl. And that was such an eye-opening experience. I learned so much in my time as an investment banker, but talk about being a masculine dominated culture and not that many women there, not that many women mentors, which I think is so important in your own career development, being able to like look to the next stage and see is that something I want for myself and for my future? So ended up leaving when I started a family for obvious reasons, like the culture and like lifestyle was not
Right.
compatible with actually embracing motherhood in that next phase of my journey, and kind of had it like a chip on my shoulder about it. Like, where is the place where you can still be um, have some sort of balance in your life and be feminine and have women to look up to that are killing it, but also have like a life outside of this identity. And like a lot of the men I worked with had partners at home that were taking care of business so they could kind of be fully dedicated to killing it their career. And one of my hypotheses were that we just needed women to build those companies, and they didn't exist yet. So at that time was consulting a little bit, just working with founders and operators and product folks that maybe needed a little bit of help on the finance side. And then like really got a peek into how difficult it was for women founders, particularly like vis-a-vis male founders. And like all of the cliches were true. Like my male founders were getting checks on the golf course just because they were talking about like, what they were building, and guys were talking about their deal flow and what they were investing in. And I wasn't finding those conversations in my own social circle. So what I really wanted to build was like, what is our golf course? Where
Ooh,
do
I
we
like that.
and talk about, what are you excited about? What are you building? What are you investing in? And normalizing that conversation, like, and wedge it right in there with like, cute sweater, where'd you get it?
Mhm.
Investing in, just normalizing that in a big way. So it took a minute to build, but I started to angel invest and just put my money where my mouth is, and invest in founders that I believe would build like the next companies that would make for like better lives for women and the women that work for them. And then kind of brought in my friends. And from there started to syndicate, which is just like a fancy way of getting women to, or people to pull their money together and invest it as one unit. So the reason I loved this way of investing was because angel investing can be so intimidating. If you're thinking you have to be writing $50,000 checks every time, like there's a company you're super excited about, well, that's a big barrier to entry, particularly if you're
Right.
and you're not confident in your investor decisions. So the way I kind of work now is, I do a few different things, but where my heart lies is making it really easy for women to get involved and investing in the private markets if they want to, making that initial check size smaller, easier, or just kind of learn by doing. Like, let me give you the on ramp. You come in, write a few checks, watch how impactful you can be. If you catch the bug, then ideally in 5 to 10 years, then there's just like a new crop of investors who are really like changing what the like investor profile looks like. A long
Also,
question.
It's so cool what you're doing also because you make it more of an experience. Even from your emails that go through different deal flows and opportunities, it's one of those emails I actually open and really go through. And I feel like I'm learning a lot because I was sharing with you my big goal with my career is eventually becoming an angel investor myself. And your emails are so juicy with insight and inspiration and encouragement all at the same time. And also the containers that you build to have these conversations and make it feel really approachable. I really admire how you're doing that because, again, for many of us, this is a fairly new conversation. We've been cut out of this conversation for a really long time. But I love how you're curating this experience for women to feel more comfortable and then build the confidence in becoming an investor or going after investing for their business.
Yeah, I'm totally with you. I think what I've learned from talking to both founders and funders, and I don't need to make everything about gender, but I have found that there is a confidence gap. There's not
Right.
a gap. Like the female founders I work with are usually waiting too long to raise capital. And they're post product, they're post revenue, they've got community, they're killing it, but they feel like I have to be so prepared in order to raise capital. And you find a little bit more confidence of like some of the male founders I see were like, yeah, I got an idea. Like, you should give me some money. And so meeting women where they are, how do we bridge that confidence gap, both from a founder perspective and from an investor perspective? And I find that usually the way to do that is a little bit of education and like lowering that entry point. So, becoming an angel investor at like a $5,000 check as opposed to a $50,000 check, it's attainable.
Absolutely. When I was talking to you of just seeing how that would be applicable to my own financial goals and career goals, breaking it down like that, I'm like, wait, I could do that. I could wrap my head around that. That's something that I can chip away at and do. And just that alone, I remember leaving the event for for Dream Ventures with Golden Hour Ventures and in just the container of the founders and the people you brought into the room. And I remember calling my girlfriend. I'm like, I feel like I could totally do this. This goal now that has always been such a big dream of mine. I really genuinely feel like I'm going to be able to do this in the next year. And so I could say just from a personal testimony of like that confidence gap definitely closing just being in a space with you.
I appreciate you saying that. Thank you
You're
so much.
welcome. I genuinely felt that. So when you were going out and setting forward to be like, okay, I'm going to make this a thing. Like I started angel investing. I'm getting some friends interested. I really want to normalize these types of conversations. What helped you differentiate your brand in this space? Because I feel like it's still fairly new-ish. And I would just love to hear a little bit more of like how you went around building the brand around this.
Yeah, and to be totally transparent, it's always a work in progress.
Right.
It really did start organically. I didn't set out to raise a fund or to start syndicating, I started just investing and I caught a bug. And I think
Mm,
whether catch the bug or you don't, like you've got an appetite for it or you don't. And I realized like I would so much rather like spend my discretionary income on investing it in women founders and in companies that I loved and I already believed in and was a consumer of and just I wanted to be in there. Part of it was just like I wanted to be proximate to builders and
mhm.
I've like always been waiting for that big product idea and it just hasn't come. Maybe it still will, but nothing makes me feel more inspired when I'm working with a founder and they've got a great idea and they've got 50 more where that came from and they just really want to like get the capital to kind of build it and scale it. So it started with just a little bit me like buying my way into this inspiration. Like, okay, I don't have my idea, but I want to put my capital behind you and I want to be here to use every skill set that I have to amplify you. And then through that feedback, I realized like, oh, I can actually be useful as an investor. So my own confidence gap closed. At first, it was like, I'll give you money and you know what to do with it. And then I realized like, oh, wait, I can add value and impact. And I have a skill set that is helpful to you that maybe like you have a little bit of a knowledge gap on. And also like, I can open my network of open doors for you of like folks that you need to know and connect. And so then you just almost be kind of, it's just so much fun that I wanted to keep doing it. And I wanted to be more impactful. And I wanted to bring in all of my community who, you know, I know so many, we all know these like just amazing women, right? That have their own superpowers and spheres of influence. And if they got involved in a company, like I know what they could do. And so what happens
Absolutely.
is you just kind of start to build a little momentum around it. So it happened really organically with just something I was excited about and a message I wanted to share. And then when I dug into the data, that is the venture gap, right?
Tell
So
us more. I'm sure we're all familiar, but please reiterate how important this damn gap is to understand and close.
yeah. So, you know, depending on who you ask, it's about like less than 2% of venture
Right.
capital goes to women founded companies. And so that's a crazy statistic in 2024. It is,
It
it,
is.
it's a massive gender gap that isn't discussed enough. Like it's discussed in my circles, but when I'm talking to folks who maybe are disconnected from the private markets, they're like, wait, what? So why is that? I really think that it is a bias issue. And most of the venture capital investors, I don't have the data at the top of my head, but it's something like, 80% of investors are men. And we all have inherent biases. Like I inherently invest in the companies that are resonant to me, right? That's my.
Right.
So when we have more representation in the investor pool, then naturally we're going to start to invest in different companies. So, I think part of the venture statistics is that we just need more women investors, more women that
Mhm.
are willing to part with their capital for return and for impact. And I found that a lot of women feel more comfortable giving their money away as opposed to investing it. And so
Yes, I remember you saying that, and that really struck me of why.
yeah, it's an interesting deep dive into the psychology of, I think, how we're socialized, right?
Right.
Socialized to be givers and to like support our community. And it's just interesting when you can reframe the way angel investing works, which is like if we could bring it back to issues that are meaningful to us. And like the one I love to lean on is like reproductive rights.
Yes.
So a lot of us care about reproductive rights. And when Roe v. Wade was overturned, a lot of us were going to Planned Parenthood to see how we can give. And I'm a huge fan and supporter of Planned Parenthood and the work they do. But also, companies like Hey Jane, which are in
Mhm.
phases and we're raising capital, like you can invest money in that company and they're shipping Plan C across state lines tomorrow, like tomorrow.
Right.
So the velocity of that capital, when you're dealing with startup founders, these aren't huge companies. Like they are making decisions with their capital like every single day. So I don't know, there's this fast return on where you can see your dollars are being impactful in the private markets. And when someone's like building a company for profit, tends to move a lot faster than, giving money toward policy change, which moves a lot slower. And both
Right.
super important, but sometimes it's like, I feel like I'm like the Helen of Troy. Like that's my like Trojan horse where I'm coming in on. I'm like, you can be impactful. And
Right.
they're like, okay, well, that feels better in my body. It's not so scary compared to I'm making an investment decision.
I think that's a really great way of how to communicate to your ideal audience and helping them wrap their head around investing, where probably by and large, this is the first time they're investing, or maybe the first person in their family investing, or first woman that they know investing, right? And so I love how you reframe it, but also connecting the dots for them, even if they're like, I'm bought into the idea of making an impact. And then you say, okay, great. Here's what we're going to do. And you put all the pieces together for them.
Yeah. Yeah. And don't get me wrong too. I like want to make return. I'm very
Absolutely.
being able to be impactful and capitalize on their efforts and their knowledge. Um, you saw the tote bags at the accelerator.
Yes.
We want to make women rich because when women have capital, they do really good things with it.
Absolutely. What is the vision that you have for Golden Hour Ventures? I would love to hear more of just maybe for the year ahead or 5 years, 10 years, 20 years ahead. I would just love to know.
Yeah, I mean the big vision is make women rich.
Love it.
To distill that down into something that was more tactical, I would really like to expand the number of angels in our network that, either come to me because they want to write their first check or they want a little bit of angel education or they want to get involved, but it feels like I have 20 dumb questions that I need to ask before I can feel ready. I want to build a community where that feels safe and easy and also really fun. Like here's the hidden secret is that it's really, really fun investing in startups and getting to be a part of, what's on the product roadmap and how to market to consumers. Like it's so interesting. And I'm a little bit of a learning junkie. So this suits my ADHD personality really well. But
Absolutely. And you're able to look at a lot of things at the same time, I'm sure.
it's like hyper stimulating in all of the ways. But yeah, to answer your questions, I want to build an army of angel investors and use what we're great at, which is building community, to really shift the flow of venture capital to something that looks a lot more equitable.
I love that vision. I can't wait to be part more of that vision. If you were meeting with a founder today and they are on that cusp of, okay, I think I'm ready to ask or pitch, or I don't even know the words to say to put some capital into my business and brand, what would you tell them? Like, what are some really big, important takeaways to help wrap their mind around this next big step?
Yeah. Yeah, well, similar to being on the investor side, I think having a little confidence goes a long
Hmm.
way. So, what does that mean for you on your founder journey? This would be a good time to plug the accelerator that I run with Annie Evans.
Please do.
Okay, I'd love to. Annie Evans of Dream Ventures birthed the fundraising accelerator a few years ago, and I joined about a year ago as like her content partner that kind of works on like the educational piece behind it. And it's incredible, and she's built such an amazing, amazing community. I'm so thrilled to be a part of it. But that is what the purpose of that accelerator is to demystify the fundraising process and take something that feels really nebulous and new, particularly if you don't come from like a financial background, and just break it down. Let me define all the acronyms for you. Let me talk to you about what a safe versus a convertible note is and like why would you issue those as opposed to like straight equity early on, how to craft an advisor agreement, how to build your team when you've got no money. So just kind of like breaking down those really early stages before your first capital raise. And then when you go out and have those investor conversations, you do feel more confident. You're not going to be stumped by the lingo. Like so much of it is just jargon, gate kept.
Right.
Just
Right.
learn language and you feel so much better in that room. And I would say that like get a really tight process around what you're doing, build yourself a big fat list of your dream investors and like rank them into like A-B tiers. Don't have your first conversations with your dream investors first. We talk about like, the chef always throws out the first pancake because it's always a little bit wonky. And then as you get going, you get better. Your
That's a good
pitch
analogy. Yes.
pitch goes the same way. So, get out there and have lots of practice of pitching yourself, having a really clear, like 30-second soundbite of what you are and what you're building and knowing how to get people more interested and like wanting more. It's essentially it's selling yourself, it's selling your vision. I think selling your product is a different skill set than selling your vision as a business. So understanding that
Yeah.
they're different things.
That's a really good call out because you essentially need to sell the vision, then you sell the product.
Exactly. Like, of course, you're going to spend time on your product, but often, unfortunately, particularly if you're, selling something to, a woman-based audience, your investor is probably going to be male. So you're going to have to back up, like your product with, well, what's the market opportunity here? How many people are interested in this product? How many people does this problem that you're trying to solve affect? So, being really passionate about your product and what you're building is great, but also really understanding the market, the size of the market, the business model behind it, knowing it up and down and sideways. So when people try to knock you off course, like you've got all of the rebuttals for it. And there was like some interesting study that came out of like Harvard Business Review recently that was like looking at investor conversations, and the women got more like challenging questions, meaning they were more negatively framed, or like, why are your margins so low? When questions were asked to men, they were more positively framed, like, how big could this get? So
Mm.
there's a little bit of art to being able to flip the script constantly and remembering that you're offering people a chance to be a part of your big vision. You're not asking for favors when you're going out and fundraising. You're presenting an opportunity.
I love that. And I am going to reiterate that to all of the founders listening to this. Write that in your journal. Re-listen to this episode because exactly what you just did is reframing how people can maybe come thinking that they're coming from a lack or scarcity or almost like a charity, right? But how you're saying it is look at it as that you're welcoming people into an opportunity that's really exciting, that's a win-win for both. And I think that's a really great reminder to also help with that confidence.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'd say some other like just like tactical tips that have worked on me as an investor that have gotten me really
Yes.
is like build publicly, including fundraise publicly. I feel like it's really interesting to watch how people take that process on. But if you have a conversation with someone, I find that like, okay, I had a conversation with it and I think it went well, but like, what now? You have to stay top of mind because people are busy, 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 and they're on to the next Zoom, they're on to the next meeting. And even if it went well, like follow up is really important. Put them on an investor update that you send with some sort of regular cadence. So even if they're a pass for right now they're getting that update over the next few months and they're watching you like, oh, whoa, she said she was going to, get in that wholesale channel and she did. And she said she was going to meet that metric and she did. So you kind of like put a fork in the road, like this is where we are when we have that first conversation.
Right.
You kind of keep them apprised of like where you are, even if it's just one-offs, like, hey, just wanted to let you know what we've built over the last 3 months and still fundraising, or like, let me know if you want to chat. Just don't forget to stay top of mind, and like relationships take time. Sometimes they're transactional, but often it's really about investing in the founder and building that relationship. So don't be afraid to get out there and then like keep at it.
I love this. Very practical, tangible, and going back to the overall conversation, it makes an impact on how far you could take something on both sides of the street. So, thank you so much. This was amazing. I personally will be re-listening to this episode because again, you are someone who I look up to and how you are making an impact, and it's something that I aspire to be. So, thank you for setting the stage and leading the way because you help me feel more confident of like, okay, this is a real thing. It could happen. It will happen. So
Happening.
thank you. Yes, it's happening. Where can people connect with you, learn more about Golden Hour Ventures, maybe join the accelerator, just be on your email list? Like I said, your emails are awesome. So, where can people find you?
Yeah, for sure. I would say my website is probably the best source of information, which is goldenhourventures.co. My joke is that I'll buy the .com when I have my first exit.
Love it.
goldenhourventures.co. And from there, you can get to my newsletter, which has deal flow, also resources, grants for founders, and just some like industry news. So that's called Golden Hour Ventures The Flow. And you can find me on LinkedIn, the old school way. Kelley Arena on LinkedIn, and that usually has like some investor events that we're hosting and other things that are going on. And on Insta, Kelley Arena.
Amazing. I'll put all the links to all your places to find and connect with you. And thank you again, Kelly, for coming on. This was such a treat.
Thank you so much for having me. Always so good to see you.
Same, same, same. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and I'll see you on the next episode.